Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel, and my guest today is Rebekah Hirsch. Hello, Rebekah.
Hi.
So you are here because I had the good fortune of sharing the bill with you at a healing seminar for the Brighton Astrology Group. And you were talking about a very interesting archetype, the Puer Aeternus. So tell us about that.
Okey-dokey. So I'm trained in psychological astrology. I trained at the Centre for Psychological Astrology with Liz Green and Howard Sass-Portis. And I remember Howard talking about this archetype, the eternal youth, Peter Pan, the beautiful child who can't grow up. And well, just to sort of flesh it out, then this was doing one of his, it was the intermediate course, and he said, Rebekah, would you mind if I did your chart as an example? And it's written all over my chart. So the Puer, or the Puella, is young and beautiful and creative and playful and full of light, and looks very promising as a child. And then when they reach that threshold of moving towards adulthood, we might think about the last Saturn square before the Saturn return when they're 21 or whatever. They struggle to go forward. They struggle to cross that threshold into taking adult responsibility for their own lives, for their own discipline, for the ability to focus and put in the effort and consistency to manifest things. So it's as though it's very much, goes very much with what we understand about Saturn, moving into dealing with the world, Rex Mundi, the Lord of the world, limitation, discipline. I know there's more to Saturn than those things, but those issues of putting in the work to bring through the gift. So, my granddaughter is very creative, and she will just sit down and draw something and paint something and make something. And it, to her, it almost doesn't matter if it goes in the bin at the end of it. It's not a thing. It's a playful thing. And we love that. We love the playfulness and the joy and creativity and so on of that youthful energy. And the word is disappointment, because when that gifted child comes to that point where they're starting to get tested, they don't make it. And the mythology, there's a lot of mythology. There's Narcissus, who can't grow up, who can't get beyond being obsessed with his own beauty, and he can't be in relationship with Echo, who's calling to him. There's Icarus. So Daedalus is the great carpenter, craftsman who built the labyrinth, but then he gets trapped in the labyrinth with his son Icarus, and he manufactures these wings made out of feathers and wax. And he's got, he gives them both wings and says to Icarus, here we go, we're going to escape. And they fly from the labyrinth. And he's warned Icarus not to fly too near to the sun. But Icarus is so exhilarated with freedom, what's another key word for the Puer, the freedom, that he flies high up near the chariot of the sun, and the wax in his wings melts, the feathers all fall, and he dies. He falls to the earth and dies. And that image of flying too near to the sun and lack of awareness, responsibility, the caution, and the urge to freedom, and the resistance to rules. These are all these things that the Puer struggles with. I'm trying to think of the Puer. Well, in a way, Persephone, if it's all right to go on with the stories.
Yes.
Is a Puella. She's there. She's out playing with, in the fields. She's her mother's daughter. She's in psychological terms, she's enmeshed with her mother. And the psychological interpretation of the myth is that something has to happen to help this little girl to grow up. And so she picks Pluto's flower, the narcissus. The ground opens up. Out comes Pluto in his black chariot with his black horses, and he grabs her and drags her down into the chariot, back down into the underworld. The earth closes over them, and she's gone. And she is stuck, this young girl stuck in the underworld with the souls of the dead in the dark and the gloom. And her mother, I can never remember if it's Ceres or Demeter, because there's, the Roman name and the Greek name.
Yeah, well, it is Demeter, yes.
Oh, thank you, Demeter. Thank you very much. I should write that somewhere.
Yeah,
so Demeter is, comes to find Persephone at the end of the day, can't find her. Has anyone seen Persephone? Nobody's seen her. And she can't be found. And then Persephone goes into enormous grief and terror and, maternal fury at the loss of her daughter. And of course, Demeter is the goddess of the harvest. She's the goddess of fertility. She's a very, very powerful goddess of the earth. And so nothing will grow. Everything's still, nothing, the harvest won't come, and the fruits and flowers will die, and people are starting to starve. And Jupiter, I don't know which is Greek or Roman, looks down from above and says, oh, this isn't going well. And he sends Mercury down into the underworld. Mercury being the only, and this is important, Mercury is the only one of the gods that can go from Olympus into the underworld. And there, I think Hecate is the witch goddess, tells them that that's where Persephone is. And Mercury has to negotiate for the release of Persephone. And Pluto does consent to her release, but there's the condition that she doesn't eat, and she hasn't eaten anything while she's down there. And Pluto has offered her the pomegranate. She's eaten 6 seeds of the pomegranate. She will only ever come back to the earth for 6 months of the year, and the other 6 months she will be in the underworld. She's the goddess of the spring. When she returns to the upper world, everything fruits and flowers, and when she goes back down, we come into autumn and winter. And the thing that has happened there, she is no longer a Puella, because many interpretations of the myth, she's chosen to eat the pomegranates. She doesn't want to spend her life stuck as a little girl. And so she makes a choice, and she's accepting the darkness. She's accepting death and all the things that go with the underworld and the dream world and the unconscious. But she's coming into her own power. So she's not living in that world, that butterfly light world of the Puella. She's accepting these challenges of mortality and so on, but she's becoming a queen. She becomes her own power, and she becomes a good queen. And there's lots of bits to that story, but this is the Puella who made it. And it's a bit violent and nasty, and a lot of the myths she's raped by Pluto, and other interpretations, Jupiter is her father, and he sees what's happening, and he doesn't do anything to stop it. And I always say this, they could have tried family therapy, it didn't have to be so heavy, but it did, because that's what it's about. So with the Puer and the Puella, what they are afraid of is exactly what Persephone encounters in the underworld. Violence, loss of freedom, depression, despair, the reality of death and mortality, and grief, and the archetype of Pluto. So if you're thinking astrologically, if it's all right to leap on, then you're going to be looking for what's Pluto doing? Where is Pluto in this chart? And with Narcissus and with Icarus, perhaps it's more like Saturn. It's like, be sensible.
Yeah. I've been listening to you, and the theme of the challenge of going into the adult world and having to face the reality that the world is not always a pleasant place. I think that's one thing. And we make this, we hope that, you know, our children are never going to encounter that before adulthood. The reality is, of course, very different. So are we talking specifically about those children who have had very nice childhoods and then find it difficult to adjust to adulthood? Or are we also talking about children who have to face things that adults normally, that adults normally face before the time? So what I'm asking is, are we talking specifically about a personality type who finds it difficult to grow up? Or are we talking about the moment in which we have to face the reality of life?
I think it's not, it's a sign of wounding. So it's not some idyllic childhood that the child doesn't want to leave, because so we do have a kind of drive to want to grow up and to want to be successful and want to make things work for us in the world. Rather, we are looking at a child, you know, we're talking about the guardians of the threshold, and they are nightmare guardians. This is Saturn, father, ogre, you know, cold, cruel destroyer, or mother as belly of the whale, engulfing, never going to let you go kind of thing. So it's really difficult talking about things. I'm a parent, you're a parent, you know, we don't get it right. We make mistakes. And so always, it's, you know, let's try and not get into too much about blame and judgment, because I think 20th century psychology is full of blame and judgment, particularly of mothers. However, something has occurred where the authority of the father or the power of the mother has not been integrated well. So that's not clear enough.
No, I think I think I get what you're saying, which basically is that there is an issue here where perhaps there's been overparenting in some way. I seem to remember Liz Green in her book on Neptune talking about Moon Neptune as too much mother and not enough mothering. And I think this is the idea, is that the parent, obviously, due to their own experiences, struggle to find a balance between control and letting go.
Yeah.
And that this is an extremely wounding thing. And I see this in my practice on a daily basis, because it inhibits the development of the child. And so so we're always dealing with adults who are basically wounded children in one way or another. So I think that that's a very powerful archetype that we're dealing with. And I can certainly see it with regards to Persephone and the myth of Persephone, because she does pick the flower.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is that in adolescence, the flower is very attractive, but we're not quite ready to deal with everything that comes with the flower, which is why we want to protect our adolescents, because they think they know everything and they know very little. But the attraction is there. And so this takes her into the underworld, and we can see this. We can see this happening. On the other hand, I'm looking at the other myths, and I think that there's something else that goes on here, which is more a case of not being ready to face the reality of adulthood. And I'm looking at the personality of different planets, and I'm thinking now, to me, that looks like Mercury, the curiosity, the creativity, the inventiveness. But here today, gone tomorrow. Even as he grows up, and perhaps we think of the Virgo qualities of Mercury, still that idea that anything could ever be perfect, I feel is a very naive ideal. And then I think about Jupiter, who, the great benefic, very much a good time Charlie. And there's an aspect of Venus for whom the idea of motherhood and coming into being anything other than the beautiful goddess of love and beauty is alien. And I see that playing out in our society. I think actually perhaps our whole entire society, our entire culture is suffering from this Peter Pan syndrome.
I think you're right that these days, and me included, everybody's got ADHD, and that was one of the things that I was thinking when I was researching the whole thing. And Mercury, absolutely. So if you're looking for this archetype or for this issue in a chart, you're looking for Mercury, you're looking for Libra and Venus, and then you're looking for the impact of Pluto and Saturn. I think more than Chiron, but maybe. And yes, it is a universal. It's not that, that person's got, they're wounded with the Puer Aeternus archetype, and this one isn't. Yes, we've all got degrees of it. And the difficulties, it's how the planets go into a duality. So if the difficulty is Saturn, if either parent is being the cold critical Saturn that is demanding perfection, and nothing you do is ever good enough, and go back and do some more, and no, you can't go out to play and get in your room, and no, I'm going to ground, if it's all heavy, and if you've got a parent who's got a plan for the child, and you put you on a career path, and you're going to go and be a doctor, I don't want to be a doctor. So there's that Saturnian thing that happens, where and it's absolutely the opposite of a child that's been given enough resources in the parenting. It's where a child has suffered too much control and too much discipline, and they kind of lack the strength to because we do want the Saturnian thing. The good side of Saturn is manifestation. It's I had a teacher once who said discipline means doing what you want. If you want something enough, you will do it. You'll put in the time, you know, and you'll take those steps and you'll climb that little ladder. And for the Puer, they keep falling off the ladder. And certainly in an ADHD way, you suddenly, oh, I'm going to do this now. I know I thought I was going to do that, but now I'm going to do this. And then Jupiter, let's go traveling, you know, and let's play, let's have fun. And Jupiter, you know, king of the gods, Jupiter doesn't do much except get people pregnant. You know, he's all about planting seeds. That's really Jupiter. It's opportunity. Plant this seed, plant that seed. You know, try this, try that. Enthusiasm. Everything is possible, kind of thing. And nothing is possible without Saturn. You know, it's that duality of Jupiter and Saturn. And if the young person doesn't, and you don't have to be young, believe me, this archetype can strike at any age. If you don't have that relationship with Saturn, something that will enable you to be your own authority and to be in touch with what really matters to you, and to accept limitation. If you can only tolerate being in the Jupiter space, you're going to struggle in life. And with Pluto, you know, who's got the power? And maybe somebody in the family might, you know, somebody has is feeling disempowered. Very often the mother, you know, 20th century mother will very often have had power struggles, or there's a power struggle between the parents. Somebody's depressed, somebody's not got their power. And then you get the parent who's trying to live through the child, which is the narcissistic wounding, where the parent is over invested in the child, and nobody's giving the child the power. Then, you know, I'm going to my third chakra here, nobody's helping the young person to find their own power and their own authority. And so when they're confronted with those kind of power struggles, they just space out and go off with Jupiter, or, you know, or flap off with Mercury. Yeah.
And I think too, there's another element to this, which is what people might call the spoiled child. The child that's
It's true. Yeah.
got, you know, where the parents are forever saying to the child how amazing they are and how, you know, they can do anything. And you know what? I find that children are actually very aware that this isn't true.
It's true.
And that creates an issue too, because then they don't know what their real strengths are or what their real weaknesses are. So, you know, the parents who are compensating perhaps for having had overly critical parents themselves want to imbue this child with a sense of infinite possibility and infinite potential without providing the structure. So there's no feedback, and the child then becomes extremely resentful of being complimented because honestly, I've had so many young people under 18 who are absolutely furious when anyone compliments them because they've heard it all and it means nothing. Yeah. What they are aware of is their struggle, and nobody is addressing their struggle in school, because all they're hearing from mom and dad is how brilliant they are, when they feel completely the opposite. Now, very often, the parents are trying to compensate for the weaknesses by helping them see that they are brilliant at other things. But that does not address the wound of not having the ability to do what they feel is required of them. So you have this, and then of course you have the ones who hear it all the time, never struggle with anything because everything comes easily to them until they hit, as you say, you know, around the age of 21, and then it's responsibility and everything else that comes with it, the expectations that we need to do more than play with creativity. We need to actually be productive. And that expectation is really, really harsh. and we can debate whether or not it should exist.
Absolutely.
But it certainly does exist in a world that is extremely material. So I've seen this again in clients, the young musician or the young singer,
Yes.
who is really wonderful at what they do, but there's actually no market for what they do. So consequently, there's a shock, because, and well, what am I going to do? What am I worth? Because what I love is worth less. So there's all of these permutations, which is why I think that this archetype in the chart is something that we all need to be aware of. So coming back then to the actual chart, are there indicators? You've talked about the relationship with Pluto, you talked about the relationship with Saturn. I've talked about the planets that might indicate a predisposition towards desiring this eternal, footloose and fancy-free existence. Is there anything more in the chart that will give you?
Very much so. In the first place, there's going to be some kind of Saturn or Pluto, 4th or 10th house, the parental axis, sun or moon, especially a conjunction, but it could be an opposition as well. I've got sun opposite Pluto. So there's an issue. And, you never know at what level a person, some people can have a Sun Saturn conjunction and it will be fine. They will, they'll use it very well and it will serve them in life. Maybe we're looking more at the square. I don't know. Certainly those two, anything to do with Sun and Moon, with the parental axis, possibly descendant and first house, possibly 12th house. And then what you're looking for in the chart is Jupiter or Uranus or Mercury, or a lot of Gemini, as you said, more than Virgo. The escape, Neptune. I'm just going to live on, in rainbow world. And Uranus, I have to be free. No, I can't sit down and do the work. No, I have to do it my way. And then it never happens. Or Jupiter is, a little bit manic. Like, I'm not, it's fine. I can do this, I can do that, I can do everything. And then the collapse and the disappointment. And yes, Venus can, Libra can go with this, the archetype. And so, maybe if you've got a Moon Uranus aspect, or awful lot of Gemini with Mercury in Gemini, and there's a delicacy. And I think you sort of hinted at it a moment ago. There is also the way in which our society is nuts, and the demands we make of young people, and these very rigid career paths that you're supposed to, these ladders that you're supposed to climb, because there's another side to the Puer, which is, all the planets we talked about, Uranus, Jupiter, Neptune, a person, not necessarily somebody who is in touch with the imaginal realm, who accesses extra dimensions of awareness. And you got a lot of Earth, you got a lot of Saturn or whatever. You can be well focused on succeeding in this life and climbing that ladder and getting the money in the bank and getting the status and the success. And for a Uranian person, that would not, that would bring a lot of depression and despair. It's not like you say to you, stop being a Puer now you grow up and you become more Saturnian. It's much like, oh my God, what do we do with this? because this person is so Uranian or so Mercurial. How are we going to capture that? And you know, whenever you get an artist, you know, who is in contact with that enormous creativity, who does have the, you know, imaginal realm flowing through them, that, you know, like Amy Winehouse and, you know, doing all the 27 Club young people, then the money makers, you know, of our society are on them like vultures, and they die because we love it so much. We love this person who can reach to those places, who can paint those pictures, who can write that poetry. You know, it's like we want that, we love that. And as you said, it's almost impossible to make a living doing those things. You know, it's like you either become famous and become a celebrity and have to deal with all that, or, you know, you have to get a day job.
I have recently been working with a young boy who is all of 16, who was referred to me because he's been literally pulling his hair out.
Yes, self-harm.
And the parents can't see that the pressure they're putting on him is driving him to this. But then when you speak to him, he has, and this is a Sun-Saturn conjunction, he has internalized the idea of the ambitions of his parents,
yep,
to the point where he cannot advocate for his own freedom. And I have spent a good deal of time advocating for him to have some time this summer to actually enjoy himself, rather than be studying 8 hours a day in preparation for what's coming in September. So this is reality for many young people.
Yep.
And I think, coming back to what you were saying about the monetization, or some would quite, I think, rightly talk about the exploitation of certain young people. I think this is, now we're extending this conversation into a cultural disease,
absolutely,
or disease, from the point of view that we have these archetypes within us: the creator, the spiritual person, the medium through which the gods speak to others through their creativity. It exists in all of us. But many of us are forced to shut it down, and consequently suffer from depression.
Yes.
And at the same time, others, the lucky ones who make it, are then exploited to the point where they don't get the chance to see who they are.
Yeah.
And are expected to be money-making machines for those who pull the strings. So we have this as almost like an illness. And really the answer to this is to find that balance within ourselves. And I think that that's the challenge of Saturn and Pluto. It's funny because I thought, my goodness, I always feel like there aren't enough benefics, you know. Jupiter and Venus, that's your lot. The moon, if she's in a good mood, maybe. The sun, if he's in a good mood, maybe. Maybe Mercury occasionally. But really, the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter, that's your lot. Unless you're working with other archetypes through the asteroids, etc. Everything else is heavy duty stuff. And yet now, listening to you and thinking about this in this context, actually, what's outnumbered is Saturn and Pluto, the two heavyweights. We haven't even talked about Mars, actually. Where do you feel Mars fits into this?
It's, you know, it would be a lack of Mars that would go with the Puer, somebody who can't assert themselves. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm also wondering about the individual who remains at that developmental stage of the terrible twos with the temper tantrums when they can't get their will.
Yes. I think that's more narcissistic. I think you know, there's a whole where it becomes pathological, what happens in the family, where the one or both parents is so invested in the glory of the child that the child becomes completely lost. That, you know, that's the essence of narcissism. I have no idea who I am. I'm trying so hard to be all these things that you want me to be. It's the, you know, the wounding end of that spectrum you talked about the devoted parents, but really what the parent is doing is trying to find that thing that they don't have and which they've lost in themselves, and project it onto the child. And you be the little golden one, you be the hero, you solve all those problems. It's got a name, hasn't it? I think it's called narcissistic cathexis. But anyway, and then you're absolutely right, because you know, Jupiter can be trouble. It really can be trouble in a chart, in a transit. So can Saturn, so can Pluto, but it's like we're looking for that downward energy of Saturn and Pluto, and to a certain extent Mars, to be grounded and to have the resilience to cope with the hurricanes that blow. And the important thing to say when you mentioned the Sun-Saturn conjunction is the inner critic, because one of the big drivers for the splitting, the fragmentation of the Puer, that they can go to the imaginal realm, but they can't get their feet on the ground in planet Earth, is perfectionism. And if the child with the Sun-Saturn or the Moon-Saturn conjunction, but possibly Sun in particular, has internalized a big superego message about how I'm supposed to be, and they love it that I'm like that. And again, it's, you know, it's not, but who am I? Am I that? You know, and the confusion, and then it turns into the voice of the inner critic. He's saying it's all your fault. You did that wrong. Look, you failed again, and you will never be good enough. And this is a very paralyzing voice for an artist. So you get these Puers who've got, you know, ideas, and they can't put pen to paper because of the critic, because they know before they've even started that it's not going to be any good, or it's not going to be good enough. Because, and this is very Uranian as well, that ideal image of how it's going to be. And that's when we need Saturn, but you know, then, but Saturn in meanwhile has turned into this awful parental voice of the critic with its massive agenda, and that is crushing. And but you know, I'm a big fan of Saturn, because sure as hell it can be a killer. You get people with a killer critic where the inner critic is so big they kill themselves or self-harm. It's not a joke. But if we can come to terms with Saturn and not be lost in the critic, but it's finding that inner authority, feet on the ground, backbone, resilience, you know, inner strength that Saturn brings, and the ability to be on this planet and cope with old age, and you know, all the terrible challenges of being human, you know. And there's the Puer with all the wonder and the beauty and the, you know, you've got to also have Saturn, and you've got to also have Pluto. You've got to know who has the power. No, it's not mum and dad. It's not that I've got to follow in grandpa's footsteps. Where is the power? You know, it's in me.
And that is crucial, because one of the issues we have with the corruption that is within the authorities only happens because so many of us are only too willing to give our authority to somebody else because we're still in that child mode. And I think, you know, listening to you, really what we are talking about is the work, that the inner work that we all need to do to be balanced adults, to be, you know, properly powerful adults, which means that we are balanced between, we don't lose that joie de vivre of the young. We don't lose the ability to play and to engage with process.
Yeah.
But we actually use that to create. And we use, and whether that is having children and then nourishing that within them, and whilst providing them with structure and security, or whether we channel that into creative projects or the creativity that exists within whatever role we're playing, that's then the well-balanced adult. And, you know, it's the princess who becomes a queen, yes, rather than being forever, wanting forever to be the princess.
Yeah.
It's really is that the harvest of life, isn't it?
It is, very much. Well, that's such a good word for Saturn. And there's well, I suppose my approach to astrology is all the planets have a negative and they all have a positive. And we all have a great inner light that is shining through the horoscope, coming through and expressing through the planets. And there's something about what we're talking about. It's something about being able to be in a human body and on planet Earth and to really be here. So there's, it's something about finding stillness. And, and that's Saturn. It's not Jupiter and it's not Mercury, and it's not Uranus, it's Saturn. And it's not even Neptune, which can be very still, but you're not here with the Neptunian stillness. It's the, and I think I'm an energy healer, so I think energetically of the functioning Saturn that is oak tree energy, where you're with roots right down in the earth and being on this planet and in this body. And, and I believe in reincarnation. I believe in the immortal soul and all that. But can you be here now? And most of us can't. Me too. Can you feel your connection to the earth and to the body and to the reality of the body but the wonder of that? My God, when you slow the clock down, Saturn, and get into the stillness, the miracle of the body, the sacredness of the body, the wonder of planet Earth, this comes in with that real deep stillness. And then when you're in that stillness, when you've got your Pluto and you can kind of feel it in your belly like a martial artist, then you can make real choices. You're not reacting to mom and dad or to society, and you're not seeking some, something that you've seen on Facebook, some influencer said, go this way, that you can be yourself. And then when you make a choice from that place, that's, then you're really living.
It's interesting because you were talking about the oak tree and the roots, and I often think of Saturn in relation to the root chakra, because really we need to heal our ability to put roots in. So, nothing grows. If you're a gardener, we all know this. Nothing grows if the roots are not able to go deep. There's a certain, you can go so far, but not as beautifully and fully as you would. So there's a stunted kind of growth unless the roots are able to go deep into the ground. And I think you're absolutely right. That is the realm of Saturn. And that stillness, when you were talking about it, made me think about winter.
Yeah.
Of winter. And again, you know, who's a fan of winter? Well, I would say there's lots of people who are fans of winter, but we are somewhat outnumbered. But because the summer is so much more showy.
Yeah.
Yet I find summer utterly exhausting.
Me too.
Because the light, you know, is, the days are so long, and my body is desperate to have some rest.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's the exuberance of getting lots done, but when I became a gardener, I grew to appreciate winter because
yeah,
it's a time of rest. And it is a time of stillness. You know, walking in woodland on a day where it has snowed.
Yeah.
The sound is muted because there's no echo around you.
Yes.
It's a specific quality to the sound, and all you hear is the crunch of the footsteps in the snow. It is, if people have not experienced that, I would recommend that you take a flight to somewhere. If you're not somewhere where it snows, go somewhere where it snows and there's woodland. Experience it, because there's an absolute magic. It's the magic of a moonlit night again.
Yes.
That you just have that stillness. And you're right, that is the gift of Saturn, because when we do that, as you said, we begin to hear ourselves.
Yeah. Yes.
And, you know, in our time, it seems more than ever, this is so needed.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much that's being thrown at us from all corners with the intention of creating a reaction.
Yeah.
And if we could go into that stillness and avoid just reacting, it's that cool head that's needed, not in a way that suppresses feeling.
Not at all.
It's different to that, but it's, well, what do I feel? What do I sense? Rather than just the indignation and the outrage that I'm expected to feel, and so that I can actually navigate through these troubled waters and remain intact and not contribute to the fueled hysteria that around us. I think this is the lesson of our time. And of course, we have had Pluto in Capricorn, pushing us and challenging us in that direction.
Yes, and it makes me think of Eckhart Tolle, the Power of Now, because I think part of the trick here is this idea that we of the pain body, so that every person has a pain body, which is an accumulation of legitimate, you know, upset and trauma and distress and grief and loss and pain. But so many teachers are saying this at the moment, and then we get stuck in it. We're dwelling in it, and we're believing in it, and we're going round and round in this. I see it like a little sort of bundle of thorns, and we're just lurching around, feeling the pain. And I should have said this, and they did that, and that was so bad. And I'm not meaning really to belittle it, because people have terrible experiences to contend with. The thing that of Eckhart Tolle said was when he was in one of those terrible, terrible places, he suddenly, you know, he suddenly made the separation. I am not that. I am not just the pain body. There is something in me that is witnessing that. Who is this witness? Who is this person? I think that's another Saturnian thing. It's like, you know, or maybe it's the sun, I don't know, but I am not that. I'm not any of, you know, I'm not the Puella or the Puer, and I'm not the Saturnian, you know, patriarch, and I'm not the Pluto Gorgon. You know, these images will be dancing through my life, but I'm not any of them. And I'm sorry, I'm such a fan of meditation. It's in the meditation, in the stillness, that you can somehow, you step out of the identification with all the suffering. And, you know, and there is suffering. This is the Buddhist thing, isn't it? You know, you will get sick, you will get old, you will die. You know, that's the way it goes. And I am not that. I'm something else. I'm, you know, there's something in me that is outside of all of that. And you know, I think it's the stillness. It's, and I'm not saying for 1 minute that this is easy. I don't think meditation is easy. You can meditate for years and it's like, where is it? Where is it? Where is the stillness? But when it comes, it's such a blessing, is to suddenly be out of it and in the stillness. And for me, that's when, you know, you're really connecting to the divine, to spirit, to higher self, to guidance, voices of the ancestors, whatever. It's in the stillness that that divine energy flows through into the manifest world. And it's kind of what everybody's looking for. And like you say, we're knocking around all over the place, dealing with them, with, you know, what on earth is going on in our world. You know, it's very, very crazy. Find the stillness, find a way, find a way to meditate. Have your Puer, you know, have your Puer and your Pella, be the golden child, and find something in you that's got the resilience to cope with the world, and then something in you that can really go into witness and find peace and find silence. And then there it is.
It is not easy. And you're absolutely right. We are not in any way being critical of when we're, because we all struggle with this.
Yeah.
This is our emotional, we are emotional beings.
Yeah.
But the difference is that that process of growing up that Saturn demands involves us being aware of our drives, being aware of our emotions.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that we are able to understand them and work with them in a way that doesn't make us fall prey to the manipulation of others and their baggage and their emotions. So it's being truly grown up means being able to deal with ourselves with kindness.
Yeah.
By understanding our frailties, not fearing them, accepting them, and at the same time working with them to grow into something that's stronger. So this is the gift of Saturn. I always call him, you know, the critical teacher. His manner isn't fluffy.
No. Not cuddly.
But on the other hand, life isn't cuddly either. Life is very difficult. So that's why it's important that we are kind to ourselves. So, you know, you were saying, we're not saying this is easy. And I'm just adding to that and saying, that's right, it's not. And that's why we need to accept that we are the frail humans we are. But if we work and that stillness that you're talking about, if we make that a goal that we aim for, that is what's going to enable us to be free. So this is the end of the archetype, because now we've got the king and queen emerging and moving towards being the wizard as well.
Absolutely. Yes, that's what I just was thinking, because when you were talking about there isn't a single person on the planet, not the Dalai Lama, not nobody, who doesn't have wounding. For some reason, the journey on this planet at the moment, it's full of difficulty and wonder and joy and delight. And but when you talk about the need to, if you don't do the, you know, some kind of psychological work, some kind of inner exploration, then you're just continually driven by the parental voices, by the family inheritance. It's like you're constantly reacting to it. So it's very important to bring that into consciousness, you know, with the kind of work that you do, that, well, so do I, you know, but whether it's therapy or something, to think, oh my God, that's my mum. Is that me? I don't know. You know, that voice, that's that image that's driving me. And the word that I use is awareness. So I'm not at all talking about spiritual bypass, where you just go and do a lot of mindfulness training and sit there with all your stuff stewing around you and you're desperately trying to find stillness. You have to know what it is that's upsetting you, what's triggering you, and, you know, and get those memories. But then you have awareness, then you know, oops, that goes that thing that always sets me off. And awareness I associate with Uranus. When you talk about the wizard, that when you've got that adult resilience and the ability to put one foot in front of the other and not fall over when the wind blows, but when you get into that stillness and you know that you are not all this, you know, this suffering is only part of the story. And then, you know, then Uranus is the witness who can look from so high, you know, from the, you know, like an eagle looking down to see it all. And yeah, and that's when you get the incredible creativity as well of Uranus, that can go out into the cosmos and come back with something completely unheard of. And, you know, it always, as astrologers, we always sound like we've got a formula for living, and actually, you know, just live. But the awareness is good. Awareness is good. Knowing, you know, looking at the chart and, oh, you know, that's quite a fourth house you've got happening there. And then getting the relationship with Saturn, which comes a lot, often it comes with time. It's quite difficult for a young person. And getting the oak tree roots and the resilience, and getting that sense of personal power, you know, not power over and not a victim and manipulator, but just, this is me. And then getting that awareness that here's all that drama and here's the stillness. And then in the stillness, I hear a different voice.
Beautiful. Well, that I think should be enough to inspire everyone.
Good.
Should they be inspired to look for you, how do they find you?
I have got a website. It's called chartingthesoul.com, because my book is Charting the Soul. Have I got a copy? And I'm on Facebook. I've got a Rebekah Hirsch on Facebook. And I'm terrible. I don't keep up with either. You know, I don't. But every now and then I get inspired to write something, and then I'll have a little flurry of writing something, and then I disappear again. But yeah, chartingthesoul.com and Rebekah Hirsch on Facebook.
Fantastic. Rebekah, thank you so much for your time today. I'll be putting a link to your website in the description box. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all for watching. Next time, we're looking at the moon's nodes. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.